Come on up.
Right here, right here.
Yeah.
Thank you. We're going to put her on the ballot now.
I almost want a pair. You can start.
Am I going to say welcome?
Do whatever you like.
Oh, okay. So welcome to Clarity 2020 TEDx. My name is Mary Erickson. Some of you have seen me here before. I'm back again. Michael and I have not yet been married. Everyone says, are you and Michael like husband and wife? And I deny it every year.
And I'm Michael Berger, and actually I am married, just not to marry. So I work as the community manager here at TEDxChilliwack and as a program director at Currency Marketing. That's what I do during the day. What do you do?
What do you do at night?
I can't say.
Okay. And because we're not married, I don't know. So this is scary. I'm looking at the notes to see, oh, yeah, that's what I do. So I'm a marriage commissioner, and I do improv comedy, and I also attend the university here. So here we go. We've got to tell you a few house rules. First of all, the emergency exits. There's a funny person in green running that way, and there's another door here. So if you have to urgently exit, those are the ways to go. Please don't come in or leave when there's a speaker up here doing his or her thing. It's really distracting, so just hold on for a couple of minutes, and once they're done, then you're welcome to leave or come back in. Washrooms, there's washrooms just out here and also down that hall and to your right. Am I allowed to tell them about those washrooms?
You are.
Thank
yes.
heavens. So please put your phones on silent. No vibrate, no ringy dingies, but please feel free to live tweet using the hashtag TEDxChilliwack.
And we do encourage you, if you would like to take pictures, you can as well. Just be mindful that the speaker may not be expecting it, so try not to get right up in their face. Just do it from your seat. Now, our TEDxChilliwack theme for this year is clarity, and you're going to see a wide range of interpretations on what clarity means tonight. Is this me again?
Yeah, still you.
Oh, wow, look at that.
That's because he wrote this.
Lying already. All right, so TEDxChilliwack is brought to you by an entirely volunteer crew of organizers and is generously supported by our founding partners, Chill TV, TEDxChilliwack, Mike Della Fortuna, Scott McVetti, who's hiding way up top, and the 18th Camel. Our visionary partners are 89.5 The Drive, Currency Marketing, and For the Win Media. And we're also very fortunate to have additional support from our champion partners around Chilliwack, the Chilliwack Creative Commission, Envision Financial, Justine Peterson Makeup Artist, the University of the Fraser Valley, and What's on Chilliwack. And most of you have a copy of the latest edition in your hands. Thank you also to our pioneer sponsors as well. And if you or your business would like to become a TEDx partner, maybe a speaker too, please contact one of our organizing committee members, who you'll see pictures of in a moment, or go to our website at TEDxChilliwack.com.
So before we begin with our 13 speakers, I want to tell you how difficult it was to summarize their introductions. We asked them to write introductions for themselves when they apply to TEDxChilliwack, and then we try and hone it down to a tidbit, just so you can get to know them a little bit better.
And it is very hard to summarize what each of these speakers has achieved, what their passions are, and what makes them amazing candidates to speak at TEDxChilliwack. And it's, we also try and include some fun stuff about them too, but we'd be here all night if we listed everything they did.
We did what we could with the time we had, but Michael and I really encourage you to take the opportunity to go up and speak to these people who are coming up tonight and ask them a little bit about themselves, because they've got incredible stories.
So tonight, up to 6 speakers from our group of presenters will be chosen to move on to speak at our main event at TEDxChilliwack on April the 11th at the Chilliwack Cultural Center. But how will they be chosen? Well, we have one speaker that will be the people's choice. That's where you, our audience here in the studio, get to select your favorite speaker from tonight's presentation, so you need to pay attention the whole time. And our speaker selection panel will choose the other speakers moving forward. Our speaker selection panel is sequestered up in the balcony right now so that you can't see any of the notes that they're writing. And I would ask them to stand, but I don't think everybody will be able to turn around to see them, so their pictures are up here on the screen. We have Kim Gemmell, we have Scott McVetti, Nathan O'Hara, Trevor O'Rourke, and Allison Seal. Let's give them a round of applause.
In addition to having a keen ear, our panels have key eyes too. They'll be looking for a number of things from each speaker. Their relevance?
Perhaps their relevance.
Yeah, okay. To our theme of clarity, their overall presence and ability to connect with you, the audience, their overall delivery style, whether they demonstrate expertise in their topic. While these are all important points, each speaker will be assigned a coach who will help them develop not only their speaking style and delivery, but also to help them flesh out their ideas. So we're looking for speakers that will not only put on a good show, but have an idea worth spreading, relevance.
You wrote that page. So that's enough of all the introductions and rules and background. Are you ready to go? All right, let's go then, Mary.
Our first speaker is Taylor Aller. Taylor is Taylor's a small-town girl with big heart dreams and describes herself as living a multi-passionate life. She is an RMT, an educator, and a speaker. She is the co-founder of the Relationship Project along with her husband and a facilitator for Free to Be Talks, a nonprofit organization promoting body positivity and media literacy. If that's not enough, she is also Mrs. British Columbia and was named Miss Congeniality at the 2018-2019 event and is the proud mom of the new puppy. Please welcome Taylor Aller.
Thank you. All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. My name is Taylor, and I'm here to talk about redefining success as someone who has multiple passions, and more specifically, how you can get clear on your own version of multi-potentialite success. A multi-potentialite is a term coined by Emily Wapnick, a fellow TED Talker, and what it means is someone who's passionate about more than one thing. I like to add to that definition and say it's someone who's passionate about more than one thing and is successful at it. And while we all have our own versions of success, the society collective version is almost exclusively reserved for those with singular passions, the experts. But where does that leave us, multi-potentialites? Where's our version of success? We get one too, right? So when it comes to success and living a multi-passionate life, sometimes we need to redefine it. And we need to see diversity in the definition of success that matches the diversity that we showcase. For example, I'm going to share with you my resume, and I have to be honest, it sounds like it could belong to 14 different people. Are you ready? In the past, I have worked in a bakery decorating cakes, in schools with kids with disabilities, as a professional hip-hop dancer, and I toured the world, been a relationship expert, a six-figure entrepreneur, all while collecting awards like Mrs. BC, Miss Congeniality, and Canada's National Hip-Hop Champions. Are you still with me? Because currently, I serve the Lower Mainland as a registered massage therapist, a college instructor, speaker, consultant, and I'm still an entrepreneur. I'm a multi-pod to the core. And while this idea might be new to some of you, it's actually been around for a while, and there's more than just me who is talking about it. There's Emily Wapnick, who I mentioned before. There's Elizabeth Gilbert, author of Eat, Pray, Love. Both of these women have so much work on this topic, and it's clear with their work in these conversations that there's so many multipods just like me, and maybe just like you, who are looking for clarity, structure, and permission to live a multi-passionate, successful life. Because I have to be honest with you, pursuing a life with more than one passion is often met with frustration and confusion. I am from a small town, some of whom had very narrow minds, and I was often told, you can't do both, and you've seen my resume, so I think it's pretty clear what I did with that information. And I think that it's possible for anyone to pursue a life with multiple passions. And I think together we need to share that information and tools so we can cultivate it. because there's been many successful multi-potentialites you probably didn't even know of, like Albert Einstein, or Julia Child, or Leonardo da Vinci, or the famous one, Steve Jobs, who actually studied Western history and dance, not tech and computers. So it's possible to live a multi-passionate life. And this year's theme of clarity in the growing Chilliwack community is such a perfect fit because, in my opinion, I think clarity comes with triumphs and mistakes. I think it comes with following your curiosity and having new experiences and following your passion, which, ironically enough, is something that multi-potentialites actually are experts in. So I'm so excited to be able to talk more about this with you. I can't wait. Hopefully, if selected to speak at TEDxChilliwack, it's my hope that this talk will create change in two ways. One, in the tactical sense of actually sharing resources, structures, tools, and techniques on how to build a successful multi-potentialite life. And in the community sense, we can start to grow awareness and conversations, and maybe even a little bit of enthusiasm for this out-of-the-box way of living. I can't wait to talk more about it with you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Taylor.
Thanks.
So we've heard a lot about self-care and not getting burnt out with all the juggling people have to do with their lives. How can you take that into account and still lead a multi-passionate life?
Well, I'll give you a spoiler. I believe that you can do anything you want, you just can't do it all at once, and you can't do it by yourself. I tried both, and it sucked. That self-care piece falls away when you're not paying attention to it. So what I like to say is schedule your life in seasons. Like how the year goes in seasons, we want to think about following your passions in that same way so you can pace yourself and not run yourself into the ground. And lean on those around you because you can't do it all by yourself. And everyone here has someone or something to offer, and we can lean on each other to get through it. We're not meant to walk through life alone, and I think it's really important we walk beside each other.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks, guys.
That was speaker number 1, Taylor Aller. Speaker number 2 is Dr. Mark Ballard. He was born in Chilliwack, and he currently supports the Chilliwack General Hospital as a general internist. Within the Fraser Health Authority, he's involved in the discussion of what is a general internist and how should they support the Canadian healthcare system. When not working, he has a collection of Hawaiian shirts that he wears, even in winter. And Mary noted that her family has personally been impacted by Dr. Ballard's empathy and commitment to finding a solution. So please welcome Dr. Mark Ballard.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am a general internist, and general internists are just like the TV character House. We come up with very complex diagnoses, and we look after very sick people. However, unlike House, I'd like to think I have much better bedside manner. My job at Chilliwack General Hospital as the regional division head of general internal medicine is to come up with new ideas to care for patients that improve the sustainability of our healthcare system, and we are trying some of those new ideas out right here in Chilliwack. Today, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to bring clarity on how improving the balance in the people in our community, as well as increasing the utilization of our generalists, general internists, general practice physicians, will improve the sustainability of our healthcare system and allow it to continue for many years to come. There was a recent Time Life magazine on happiness. And happy people tend to be very well-balanced people. Well-balanced people tend to be emotionally connected to friends, family. They tend to have a physical endeavor, a sport, hiking. They also had an intellectual pursuit, whether that be academic, musical, arts, and they had a spiritual focus that kept them focused on what it meant to be a good community member. We found that well-balanced people tend to use the healthcare system far less than unbalanced people. Unbalanced people tend to get ill more often, use our healthcare system more often. They accumulate more illnesses, which require more subspecialist care. The more subspecialists you utilize, the more resources the healthcare system must put into the healthcare system to sustain the population. So maintaining a healthy, well-balanced population will reduce the resources used to sustain our public healthcare system. On the supply side, looking at the physicians, the more we can use our general physicians, the more we can have a sustainable healthcare system. Right here in Chilliwack, we're using two ideas to improve the care for the patients of Chilliwack, as well as increase our efficiency. One idea is if you take general internists and you place them in an intensive care unit, the intensive care unit is a unit designed to look after the sickest patients. You give them a strong team of nurses, IVs, central lines, ventilators if they require, and then you connect it to the novel idea of telehealthing an intensivist, an expert in critically ill patients. What we have found is by connecting the internist, the general internist, with that intensivist by a TV screen, you can get the same expertise as a larger center. We have showed improved resource allocation, improved team satisfaction, and there is evidence that it improves mortality. In the outpatient setting, you can look after sicker patients with these general internists and get the patients better before they require the full hospital. So you give that general internist access to a good nursing team, IV access, you get them a good team network to support each other and learn from each other, you can avoid the admission before it's even required. And we're showing that right here in Chilliwack. So, ladies and gentlemen, I hope I provided clarity today that the more we promote a well-balanced population well-being, the more we promote generalism, the more sustainable our healthcare system will be. Thank you.
So how does a general internist influence the care of a patient when working with their GP?
So the GPs and general internists work very, very closely together. And so we often meet in the same room, side by side. We chat about patients right in real time, just very, very much like the intensivist supporting the general internist. We have a very collegial relationship with our GPs, so that way, if they need to reach out, they can just call me on my cell phone. I can talk to them. We also exchange notes, and all of that allows us to augment the care of our patients.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks. I didn't know that. Speaker number 3 is Hardeep Chagger. Hardeep has built a career that circles the globe and has worked with General Electric, Smiths Aerospace, JP Morgan, Canadian Helicopter Corporation, and the Fraser Health Authority. In his current role as Executive Director of System Optimization at Fraser Health, he is currently in the pursuit of democratizing healthcare. In his spare time, Hardeep builds and restores classic Datsun Z series cars and is a DJ. Spinning the decks, he says. Please welcome Hardeep Chagger.
All right, thank you for having me here today. So there's 84,000 people around the Chilliwack region. Last year, we saw 60,000 visits to the Chilliwack General Hospital through the emergency department. And I just looked at the emergency data right now, and there are 38 patients waiting in the emergency room for a bed. Our healthcare system is congested and broken. So I'm here today to share with you guys and ladies how you can all take control of your own healthcare journey whilst fixing the system as a whole. The way that we can do that is by democratizing the data that is actually not available to you all. So over my career, the last 25 years in aviation, supply chain, and technology, I've gathered my skills and I've come to healthcare to help strive towards excellence in the service delivery model that is provided to the public like yourselves in healthcare. And the way that we're going to do that is by democratizing 3D models in virtual reality, which we have created. I feel that I'm well positioned to deliver the promise, as I am in charge of leading data analytics for 1.8 million people across Canada. And over the last 6 months, we have developed multiple tools internally where we've proven by visualizing data and doing 3D modeling, we've created internal collaboration between our clinicians and physicians, which has actually driven better outcomes. We're now able to send our patients home to their families quicker. Sorry? Okay, sorry. So we can send the patients home to the families quicker. I'm sorry, I've gone totally blank. Yeah. So the bottom line is our healthcare system is fundamentally broken. There's a severe lack of clarity in our healthcare system. We don't know how to navigate our healthcare system. Wait times is actually never just in time. So how are we going to solve these problems? The way we're going to solve these problems is by giving access to information to the public so that you can make your own decisions around that data. So for example, imagine a world where you could log in and have a look at the wait times at your hospitals, and you can make your own choice in your journey on where you want to go. It's a better outcome for you. It's a better outcome for the system. So as we move forward from today, by democratizing this data and engaging you in the healthcare journey that you pay for, so there's 3 fundamental things that we can do moving forward today. One is creating the awareness around, if we share our data and our experience in healthcare, how our collective power, we can really make a difference. 2 is to engage you all and the public in the platforms that are available in making choices for your own healthcare journey. And 3 is to engage with our youth today in a gamification model where they can look at their own healthcare journey and make a better journey for themselves than we have seen over the last several decades, as healthcare has really suffered from congestion and always being over budget. Thank you.
Thank you. So that's quite the gambit of experiences. What do General Electric, aerospace, finance, and healthcare have in common?
Supply chain. So they all have supply chain, whether it's product or service. So what I'm trying to create within the healthcare is the supply chain of care, and we call that the continuum of care. So people don't bounce in and out of the healthcare system and starting back at the beginning. How do we support people in the supply chain of their care from start to finish?
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you. Our next speaker, number 4, is Steve Kroner. Steve is a dad, an entrepreneur, a multi-sport coach who believes that all children can become good athletes and a select few can become great athletes. He believes that there is a specific mindset that sports and esports athletes use to become great. Steve is involved with the Chilliwack Giants football team. The Giants took 5th place in the provincials in 2019 with one of the youngest teams in the province. Please welcome Steve Kroner.
Thank you for having me. I'm here to give clarity to parents, grandparents, guardians of children that ultimately play esports and sports. Basically, gamer kid versus sporty kid. Now, the definition of esport is ultimately a video gamer that plays in front of spectators. Generally, they are professional gamers. Now, the definition of sport is actually an activity that involves physical exertion and then you actually put your skills to it, and then you compete against an opponent. Basically the same thing, except for one gives you a little bit more bumps and bruises, okay? I've been a coach since 1999, coaching thousands of kids in sports. I donate 500 hours a year coaching these kids. The one thing that us coaches really realize, we have to give them the clarity to connect, because that's really what it's about, connecting on your team, connecting with your teammates. Now, I had a player about 10 years ago, his name was Mac, and his parents were going through a pretty tough divorce. And if anybody knows going through that, that can be really challenging. Well, we helped Mac really realize how to connect with his team and his teammates to get him out of a very tough spot. That year, Mac became our most valuable player. I have another kid that moved from North Vancouver to Chilliwack and was very depressed because he left his friends. And he didn't really know how to connect with them until, guess what? He started to do a little bit of online gaming. He started to do a little talking online. And before you know it, he was connecting back with his friends and not so depressed. That kid was actually my son. Now, statistics out there, you can find them all over the internet, and that you'll find that when you search, that when you find for sports, in sports, there's over 3.5 billion soccer fans. It's basically half the world's population. 2.5 billion cricket fans, 2 billion field hockey fans, and NHL didn't even make the top 10. NFL football, 400 million fans, and it's barely growing. All those sports are barely growing about 5%. Now, we talk about esports. Esports, in 2016, there was 270 million fans. Okay? This year, 2020, 4 years later, there's supposed to be 495 million fans. That's an 83.33% increase. Okay, so we see where these kids are going and how do we connect with them, okay? Now, if chosen to speak in April, I will bring it. I'm going to bring the pros and cons, the risk and rewards, the questions the grandparents, the parents are asking. What type of game should my kid play? How many sports, should he do? And, should he game for 6 hours? And I say, well, if you don't think your kid should play soccer for 6 hours straight, he probably shouldn't game for 6 hours straight. So really what I wanted to accomplish here today is don't discount esports, don't discount sports. It can mean everything to a child. And you never know, that one moment, that one boost of confidence that he gets or she gets can last a lifetime. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve. So in today's culture, a lot of times, every child has to be a winner. Every child has to get a medal or a trophy. How do you compensate for that when sports is all about winning and losing?
So I think of a situation this year, our girls' soccer team. We were not supposed to do well, and these girls were selected, and we were chosen to go and fight in all these games and these tournaments, and we went 13-0-1 to win the Fraser Valley districts. And instead of focusing on winning, we just focused on dominating. We didn't worry about the winning side, but if you dominated the player, you dominated the game, then you're going to win no matter what.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was speaker number 4, Steve Kroner. Speaker number 5 is Carrie DeYoung. Carrie is a therapist, a consultant, and writer with over 20 years of clinical experience working in trauma treatment programs, residential addiction treatment, and private practice. Her focus is to bring greater awareness of the impacts that trauma, stress, and mental health challenges have on the use of mood-altering substances and behaviors as a way of coping. And her mission is to bring more science and more compassion to the field of addiction recovery. Carrie lives on a small island and commutes to Vancouver for work. Please welcome Carrie DeYoung.
Great to be here, thank you. Wouldn't it be nice if we lived in a world where there was a little bit more emotional regulation and a little bit more rational thought? I'm here to introduce interoception and neuroception, 2 sensory systems you've likely never heard of. We're all familiar with our sensory systems of smell or taste or touch. Interoception is our ability to feel what's actually going on in our bodies, and neuroception is our subconscious system for detecting threats and cues of safety and danger around us. And so as I think about the work that I do as a therapist, I'm really passionate about understanding our neurobiology, how our brain and our body is wired, and about the mind-body connection. And it's the fact that if we know what's going on here, we have a better idea of what's going on around us. I'm fascinated by neuroscience research, particularly the work of Stephen Porges, Dr. Porges, who has given us our understanding of neuroception that I'm going to be talking more about if my talk is chosen. Have you ever given any thought to how you experience emotion, or how you know whether you're hungry or thirsty? Interoception is our ability to sense the cues that happen somewhere in our body and that our brain interprets. Every bodily sensation and every emotion produces different sensations in our body. Hunger feels different than thirst. Anger feels different than joy. And what we're doing with interoception is figuring out what's going on here, and then our brain makes sense of it. A number of years ago, I lived in a home where with a group of friends, and we used the garage for storage. And one night I needed to go get something. So as I went to go put my key in the lock, I noticed the door was ajar. And without thinking, I pushed the door open and was going to reach for the light switch when I suddenly got this clear sense of danger. So I went and I got my friends, and together we discovered that there had been a break-in. Boxes were rummaged through. The expensive mountain bikes that were unlocked were still there, and only a set of Henkel's knives were missing. Had I actually interrupted a B&E in progress? My mind will never know, but my body sure did. That's neuroception, our other real-life superpower. And it's like I said, the subconscious system that gives us cues of safety and danger around us. And when we have neuroception that isn't working correctly, we tend to think we're safe when we're not. We think of people that take high risks in their behaviors, or people that feel unsafe when they're actually safe, like people who have a fear of flying. There's this, one of the things that I'm really passionate about is helping bring this awareness of clarity. I really believe that that neuroception, that idea of being able to tell cues of safety and danger, is another one of our superpowers. And my talk, I believe, fits the theme of clarity because we're meant to pay attention to the systems that are giving us information here. That when we're clear about our own experiences of emotions and bodily sensations and safety and danger, we have a better understanding of what's going on rationally and around us. And so if my talk is chosen, that's one of the things that I'd be really excited about talking about. Wouldn't it be nice if clarity and rational thought only took us paying more attention to what's going on in our own body? Thanks for listening.
Carrie, I think you missed one superpower, and I have it, potato chip sensor.
Okay. That's an amazing superpower.
I know. It keeps me happy.
Yes.
So you said your mission is to bring science and compassion to the field of addiction recovery. How can science and compassion complement each other when working with an individual?
Well, I think the whole field of neuroscience really helps us understand the impacts of trauma, chronic stress, and anxiety on the patterns of mood altering. And if we have more compassion for people, for the things that they've experienced that lead them into mood altering, to numb and shut down, I think we have more compassion for them. So it's the understanding of how trauma affects the physical body and the neurobiology, and then we have compassion for the hardships that they faced.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Speaker number 6 is Debbie Deneau. Debbie has over 40 years of professional experience working with children, youth, families, family resource programs, community development initiatives, and literacy. Debbie currently works with the Chilliwack Learning Society as a literacy outreach coordinator. Her passion is to promote the importance of literacy and lifelong learning. She is co-chair of Chilliwack's Financial Literacy Committee, chair of the Chilliwack Healthier Community Network's Poverty Reduction Task Force, and participates on several other working groups. Most importantly, her dog Hugo was featured in episode 8 of the Dog Dudes reality TV show that aired in fall of 2019. Please welcome Debbie Deneau.
It's funny what turns out to be the most important thing in life. If I were chosen to do a TED Talk, of course I would love to talk to you about literacy. I would provide information in general about literacy. I would provide information about how to recognize when people are struggling with their literacy levels. And I would provide some ideas for action to mitigate or take the edge off some literacy situations. So I would like to give an example to illustrate what my talk would be about. Let's picture ourselves going to the grocery store. And we're in a hurry, so let's go quickly. Let's all run in together. Wow, it would be really fun if we could actually do this. But what I'm asking you to do is picture in your mind, visualize going to the grocery store. Run in, we're in a hurry. We want to just pick up 1 or 2 items. And the best way to do that, in our opinion, the fastest way to do that is to go through the self-checkout. So we get to the self-checkout and we wait because it's busy. And we start to look around and we wait, and we're not feeling quite as happy now. Our quality of life might have gone down because we're waiting. And it's taking about 2 minutes per person to go through, but there's a woman over there who's taking about 4 minutes. What is going on? It can be annoying, it can be stressful. So what I'd like to suggest is that we take a moment to reframe what we're seeing right now, to take a different look at how we're visualizing, how we're taking in this information about what's going on in the grocery store right this minute. We need a lot of literacy skills to get through our everyday tasks of going through the grocery store, such as reading, numeracy, financial literacy, communication, technology. And at the self-checkout, we actually use our visual literacy skills, which is our ability to take in, understand, decode, make sense of, and then use the information that's coming to us from things like pictures or graphics, for example. So if we put on, I'm going to say, a literacy lens, and we can stand in that lineup and say, wow, there's some literacy going on here. That woman who is slower might be using technology for the first time. That woman who is slower might be struggling with literacy. That woman who is slower might be buying broccoli for the first time. Where's the barcode on broccoli? I can't find it. And that's the literacy lens. But let's add another lens around quality of life. If we are able to give space to that woman and relax at that time, we have just improved our own quality of life. And I can tell you, from my experience as a literacy outreach coordinator and a person who lives in your community, that if you do that, that changes life. That is life-changing. I am likely to be that person who's going to slow you down in that grocery store. My literacy struggles because of vision and poor vision. It takes me much longer to do any of those things. So I would say thank you for any changes that you make.
So Debbie, my question is, why am I always behind that woman in the grocery store?
Because you're lucky.
I am. So some people find it difficult to believe that literacy is still a challenge in 2020. What do you think is still an area specifically that needs to be addressed?
Specifically,
Specifically.
oh, Michael.
Pick one.
Specifically, sorry, I just need a second here because, you know, I think wide.
Yep.
I'm just going to say that general knowledge about the importance of lifelong learning, that needs to continue to be addressed, and to make space for each other, like I was just talking about, honestly, to make space and understand that people learn at different rates, have different literacy strengths, and we need to continue to find ways to accommodate that. I think that still needs work.
Thank you, Debbie. Dr. Stark. That was speaker number 6, Debbie Deneau.
Well, I didn't run out of time, but I...
Microphone is still on. What you can't see is that there's a big timer over in this corner that our speakers can see, and it flashes red when you go too long. So, speaker number 7 is Chester Ferris. Chester has quite the resume, another one that we really can't do justice to with just a short introduction. He has served in the military. Thank you for your service, Chester. Has been a Saskatchewan farmer, a hotel manager, and CEO of a U.S. marketing firm, a champion auto race car builder and driver, and an equestrian endurance racer. I'd say Chester's pretty well-rounded. Here's Chester Ferris.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Clarity. Before that, let us go to truth. For without truth, there can be no clarity. Truth. Each of us has a definition. Mine is the knowledge of all things as they were, as they are, and as they will be. Only God could have such knowledge and such truth. In Canada, the world today, my interests are in water, climate change, global warming. 7,000 requests were sent to the greatest scientists in the world and said, scientists, ladies and gentlemen, please answer these questions on the 11 pages. 7,000 were sent out. 97% of the respondents said global warming is a fact. There were 34 responses. 3 of them said global warming is true. The 34th one said it's not true. 6,966 scientists in the world did not respond, but Obama stood up and said 97% of the scientists in the world said there's global warming. There were only 34 people in that statistic. Around the world today, we have 7 model climate stations. The information that we get from those climate stations are based upon the facts that people put in to those models. If they are wrong, the facts coming out will be wrong. Now, the world has a need for water. Canada has 40% of the fresh water in the world. If global warming occurs, Vancouver will be underwater. Where you and I sit tonight, 14 million years ago, was the bottom of the ocean. Did you know that? And in the Fraser River Valley, because of the receding water and the glaciers over time, the sediment came down, and this is the richest soil in Canada. And so is Saskatchewan, but for different crops. So there must be a clarity in what we speak and where we get our information from. Clear water, clarity, and the truth, having all the facts. Thank you very much. This is the best part. This is the part where I get to tell you I have 8 children, 26 grandchildren, 3 great-grandchildren, and I will be 90 years old on the 19th day of July.
Wow.
But not this year.
Chester, I don't know what to ask now. You've pretty well covered everything.
Are you busy next Thursday night?
If we're not underwater.
How many people know me before? Have you ever been to the Greek Island restaurant? You ever see a doorman at the Greek Island restaurant? Very good. I always wanted to be a doorman. Go ahead, ask the question. I'm sorry.
Chester, as a doorman, will I get special rates at the Greek Island?
You'll get priority parking.
So, Chester, here's my real question.
Yes.
We talk about climate change and we hear how it's impacting the oceans and water levels and things like that. How specifically is climate change impacting our local rivers and lakes?
Climate change, ladies and gentlemen, is a hoax. We've been here on this, the world's been here 9 billion years. This universe has been here 16, 13, 14 billion. Clarity, there's all kinds of facts out there. Don't believe it. Don't be concerned. You're going to be as happy as you can be living in Chilliwack or British Columbia. Go for it.
Thank you very much. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think that's a great place to have a stretch break. We're going to take 30 seconds to stand up, shake things up, stretch our bodies, and stretch our minds a little bit later when the next speakers come on. It's okay, you can talk. I don't think so.
We're moving fast tonight. Speaker number 8 is Joanna Gauthier. Joanna is a PhD candidate at McGill University awaiting to defend her thesis. Her research focuses on reconstructing the history of lakes with different tools, such as the remains of organisms and DNA present in the sediments. She's particularly interested in the ecology of microscopic organisms that are understudied in aquatic ecosystems, as we all are. During her PhD, I guess I'm the only one then. During her PhD, she worked to reconstruct the ecological history of Cultus Lake in order to better understand the application of DNA to better reconstruct lake histories. Joanna is originally from Quebec and has traveled internationally to study water. Please welcome Joanna Gauthier.
Once upon a time in Cultus Lake, I want to tell you the story about Cultus Lake. The story to see clearly how the lake changed over the past 200 years and how human activities affected the changes in the lake. Cultus Lake is the home of two endangered species, the Cultus Lake sockeye salmon and the Cultus pygmy sculpin. Two residential areas surround the lake as well as numerous campgrounds. Cultus Lake is an important part of the economy of Chilliwack, as it offers many recreational activities, such as boating, fishing, swimming, hiking, and camping. Currently, there is 2 to 3 million people visiting Cultus Lake over the years, and these visits are mainly concentrated during the summer months. Agricultural lands take up a large portion of the landscape surrounding the lake. Cultus Lake is also close to urban areas, which means that the atmospheric contaminants that can reach the lake from the cities are more intense. And also from the agriculture, there's a lot of emissions from there. But how do human activities affect the lake? And is Cultus Lake healthy? And how did it change over the past 200 years? Cultus Lake mud is telling us a story, and now it's time to listen. Yes, lake mud can be considered as a natural archive, and looking at lake mud is like opening an history book. The clarity about the past ecological dynamics can then be revealed. Using biological, chemical, and physical indicators preserved in the mud can help us understand how Cultus Lake has changed over the past 200 years. As an important part of the economy of the region, it is important to preserve the services that Cultus Lake offered to us. In the coming TEDxChilliwack event, I hope to have the opportunity to clarify how Cultus Lake has changed over the past 200 years. I would discuss about how we can reconstruct the past ecological dynamics of the lake and by using different indicators found in the mud. I would also link those changes that we found in Cultus Lake to the human history of the region. Let me tell you the story about Cultus Lake.
Thank you very much. So you talked about stressors that we have that impact Cultus Lake, and you talk about boating and cultural and farming. What are other stressors that the average person might not be aware of?
Well, the atmospheric contaminants, I think, is one that people don't necessarily are aware of that, but all the cities that are close to Cultus Lake, or many other lakes, but because we talk about Cultus Lake, all the winds are coming from Vancouver, so all like the main winds. So you have like the emissions from Vancouver, Abbotsford, all the cities, and also there's a lot of emission from the agriculture. A lot of people are not aware of that.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That was speaker number 8, Joanna Gauthier. Speaker number 9 is Lawson Graham. Lawson is a grade 11 student at St. George School in Vancouver and is passionate about sports, school, and more importantly, our future. Specifically, how to achieve food, water, and energy for the future. For the last 3 summers, Lawson has volunteered as an internet communications consultant, collaborating on a broad range of projects. In 2019, Lawson was selected to present his plan for a productivity-enhancing mobile phone software at the Dragon's Lair Business Competition. There is much more that this young man has accomplished, but we simply don't have time. But please welcome Lawson Graham.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm here to tell you all that actions speak louder than words, and my talk will be about action. You see, by 2050, there will be around 9 billion people living on the planet, which means we won't have enough food to go around, and my generation will be the ones who are struggling for any sort of food or future. And so you see, we have to take action now. We have to collaborate and ideate to save our planet, and we have to do it through projects like the 2030 Project. The 2030 Project is all about connecting youths to industry leaders through the usage. It's all about connecting youths to industry leaders, and this will be done through idea generation, which can be funded, tested, and implicated within a matter of days, and thus innovation can be rapid. This innovation will be done through our youth-led innovation centers. These centers will utilize events called idea sprints, which are 24 to 48-hour problem-solving marathons. In these marathons, there will be winning ideas, which will then be tested and implemented at our own small-scale innovation labs. And from there, these ideas that are successful will then be spread out throughout all problem-solving centers, and we will be able to continually generate brand new, relevant ideas. So at this point, we already have one prototype center built, and that's at St. George's School. And so here we already have 6 months planned out, where on February 18th, we'll be running our first ever idea sprint. On March 10th, we will actually be building our own sustainable greenhouse, which will be our testing facility, as supplied by BW Global, a local business in Abbotsford. And on May 18th, we will actually be testing all these products that have been generated in our idea sprint and actually tested in our greenhouse. So, TEDx's theme of charity completely relates to my project, due to the fact that, by definition, my project's goal is to set out plans and ideas that will be clear for the future. Not only this, but the entirety of the Fraser Valley also stands to benefit from a project like this, due to the fact that the businesses and communities are all focused around the agricultural community and economy. And so it makes sense to connect youths to some of the leading minds at agri-tech companies such as BW Global, Monsanto, and that's the two of them. So with this, they can work together and thus be able to generate brand new ideas that can fend off this looming problem of food security in the Fraser Valley, and not only that, but the world. So you see, today we need to take action. We need to listen to those who have spoken before us and identified this problem. And we need to do it through groundbreaking ideas that will change the status quo. I came here today because this is an idea that's just not worth sharing. It's an idea that must be shared. And in sharing, I ask that each and every one of you can begin to engage in this project, whether through participation, partnership, or simply connection. Our world is going to be facing a huge problem in our future. And I ask that each of you will join me in taking action. Thank you.
And thank you.
Thank you.
Mary wanted me to ask you a question about sports, but I'm going to ask you something.
Answer.
Yeah, that's too easy. So I'll ask you something else. In the past, many young people got into agriculture, got into farming because they lived on the family farm or they had a tie to the family farm. And now with family farms going away, young people don't have that opportunity to just take to it naturally. And you're encouraging young people to invest time and effort into what you're talking about. How do you attract those young people to do that?
Well, I think the attraction really just comes from the fact that we've got to live somewhere in the future. And so sustainable farming is kind of that, it's got that appeal of that farming had in the past. But it's just, with sustainable farming, we can farm whilst still having a future to live off of. And so it's really incentivizing people to just, if you feel like you want to live in a place that we have a strong, solid foundation for a future in, then people will naturally be brought towards this idea of sustainable farming.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
That's speaker number 9. Speaker number 9, Lawson Graham. And now speaker number 10 is Luke Hupton. Luke came to Canada from England in 2015. After studying art therapy, he's worked as a youth counselor in Vancouver's downtown east side and with the Boys and Girls Clubs of South Coast, BC. I guess he hasn't done anything in the north or the west yet, just the east and the south. As well, he's worked in recovery homes in Vancouver. He is close to wrapping up his master's degree. How close? That's close. In counseling psychology. On another note, Luke has toured some of the most allegedly haunted locations in the UK. Let's welcome Luke Hupton.
So I have to begin by saying that I started my career in filmmaking. I didn't kind of go straight into therapy, and I have kind of left filmmaking in order to not have to stand in front of crowds and do speeches. So I'm not quite sure how I ended up here, but here we go anyway. So I moved here in 2015, as was said, and I studied art therapy. Most people, when they think about art therapy, they think about like traditional art materials, so like painting or like crafting or knitting and things like that. I don't do any of those. As a filmmaker, I felt like the odd one out, like the kind of like the ugly duckling of the crowd, and I was also the only male in the class. My teacher always reminded me, though, to think about my own lived experience, and she said, never underestimate your own lived experience. That has always stayed with me as I've left school and moved into addiction and moved into working with youth. As somebody who has also recovered from post-traumatic stress disorder and has lost someone to substance use, this work is so close to my heart that when I left school and I did work on the downtown east side and I did work with all these young people, I couldn't help but not just be there as a vocation, but be there like wholeheartedly and be there with every ounce of my being. And I feel like it was that connection that really helped propel me into this field. As part of my work, I was also facilitating art therapy groups, which allowed me to kind of continue my work, and a program that I developed at school, which is using stop-motion animation to help youth retell, rewrite, and reframe the stories that they've told themselves, that other people have told them, and what they've internalized about their experiences of the world. Addiction is a very complex and messy disease, and it doesn't just exist within those who use, it's also people who are affected by it as well. So I don't just work with those who are using drugs actively, but also like their children, their family members, and everywhere else. The reason why I'm here today is because talk therapy is very limited, especially for someone who's experienced trauma. And it's a bit of a chicken or the egg situation with clinicians because our mental health services and our substance use services are very segregated and they don't actually communicate with each other. So if someone is sent to me for addiction, I'm obligated to send them back to someone else for mental health services when really the two are very much intertwined. So creating a service and a program that is for the YouTube generation that actually uses filmmaking and art combined to take their story and to make it move and to move it forward and away from what has held them back so much into something else completely to show that they have clarity around a future and clarity around just who they are as a person. I think that's really important. I think that's desperately needed in these really challenging times. Thank you.
So you've worked with youth at risk in Vancouver, now Chilliwack, correct?
I work in Chilliwack at the Chilliwack Youth Health Centre, and I'm also in Mission at Fraser House Society.
Okay, great. What's a major difference, if any, that youth in a smaller community face compared to young people in the big city?
The biggest one is services. So while there are services out here, government and nonprofit, there aren't any youth shelters. There aren't any kind of, in Vancouver, there's lots of interdisciplinary services. So for example, you might have LGBTQ services, or you might have more First Nations services, more culturally appropriate things that do like an extra part of what I can't do. Because we, as much as you're trained in mental health and substance use and other kinds of addiction, you may not be able to offer those really important pieces that are part of someone's biopsychosocial spiritual healing. So, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
That was speaker number 10, Luke Hupton. Speaker number 11 is Carrie Moore. Carrie, along with her husband Sean, runs Volunteer Fraser Valley, which I have used many times. She has a passion for volunteer management, loves to train nonprofits, and sees change that benefits volunteers, staff, and clients. She takes great joy in helping people find the perfect volunteer placement to fit their lifestyle, time commitment, and interests. Carrie also does stand-up comedy for fundraising events in Chilliwack, just in case you need to hire a good comedian. Carrie Moore.
Fraser Valley is. We are a virtual volunteer center, which means organizations can send us volunteer opportunities and we post them to our website, and then individuals can go to the website and find opportunities in just one stop. So that's kind of cool. I have been in the volunteer management world for over 25 years now, and I've also been a volunteer for over 40 years. I've taken courses at Volunteer Canada, Volunteer BC, and UFV, and in numerous other places. And one of the most awesome things I've discovered about volunteers in Canada especially is that we have a very diverse and rich volunteer world in Canada. Stats Canada, at their latest poll that came out, said that 47% of all Canadians actually volunteer, which is 13 million of us, which is a big number. We put in over 8 billion, that doesn't seem right now, hours a year, which works out to be 1.1 million full-time jobs a year, which is quite amazing. 156 hours on average is what people volunteer. So who are the greatest number of volunteers that are out there age-wise? They're actually the millennials, which is very impressive. They say that 58% of millennials say that they volunteer, which is quite surprising, I thought. The volunteers that actually put in the greatest number of hours, though, are the 65-plus volunteers, or the senior volunteers. They are there doing the longer hours. Millennials get in, get the job done, get back out. In the last few years, organizations have been getting ready for what happens when these senior volunteers retire. And they're getting ready for this huge boom of baby boomer volunteers that are coming. Except something happened. 2 things happened, actually. The seniors were like, hold my beer, I'm not going anywhere. And they haven't stepped down. And I think one of the reasons is, for 2, that the boomers themselves are not wanting to volunteer. They're not retiring. They're actually staying in the workforce, or they're going back to school and changing their careers entirely. Volunteering is not on their radar at all. So what are these boomers doing? When they do finally retire, they are doing things like traveling. They're going, I have a family, maybe I should spend time with them. They're making bucket lists, and volunteering is not on those lists. They don't want to do the typical, I'm going to volunteer for you on a Tuesday for 2.5 hours until I die, volunteer positions. They don't want to stuff your envelopes. They don't want to cut up vegetables, and baby boomers definitely don't want to hand out water at one of your events. So what do we consider baby boomer and millennial volunteers? They're actually the highly skilled volunteer. They're looking for impactful, meaningful volunteer placements. They're looking for things to do at your organization that they can do in a timely manner. They want to get in, get out, be able to tell their friends and their peers, this is what I did, look at me, I'm really good, and I used my skills, and now I'm going down south. So organizations, this is what, we think of it the opposite way, though. We post opportunities and hope that somebody comes along and fits that opportunity. Organizations need to start thinking, I have a highly skilled person coming to me. They want to volunteer and they want to give to my organization. How am I going to place them? So if I get chosen for TEDxChilliwack, I'll be sharing my ideas on why volunteers or why organizations need to have greater clarity in their volunteer placements and their volunteer advertisements. And that will help the organizations themselves work with these volunteers to benefit their mission and their vision and give it better clarity for the volunteer to say, I've helped your organization. Thank you very much for listening to me today.
Thank you, Carrie. So although I'm not a baby boomer, I did chop vegetables and enjoyed it.
Okay.
my question for you is, how can a potential volunteer make sure that an organization is a good fit for their skills and their time?
By doing a lot of research. Don't just walk into an organization because your grandmother volunteered there or your father worked there. Find out what their mission statements are, what their goals are, and how that they can actually fit in to their organization. So if their time commitment, they want you for 7 hours a week, and that's definitely not going to fit, talk to the volunteer coordinators. If you see the positions that are being posted don't match you, but you really have a passion for that organization, call and see where you can fit in.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And that was speaker number 11, Carrie Moore. Speaker number 12 is Gary Schuster. Gary says he is one of the world's most prolific independent inventors. He is a named inventor on over 200 issued patents that range from passive medical diagnosis to flight safety, working with reducing the impact of collateral impact from drones to defeating facial recognition. Hopefully not all at the same time. He graduated from Harvard Law School and consulted with Fortune 500 companies to enable numerous startups to get off the ground. His touchstone saying is, innovation requires that we know enough to imagine what is possible, but not so much that we think we know what is impossible, because we're often wrong about what we think is impossible. Please say hello to Gary Schuster.
Hi. So let's hit the theme first. I'm here to talk to you, and hopefully, regardless of whether I end up at the TEDx or not, I got a room full of you, and I would like you to leave today with a better clarity about your capabilities, about your innovative capability, your ability to change the world. So given that, let's start out with an admission. I'm an imposter. I don't understand why I'm here. I don't understand how it is that, I'm an imposter with stages filled with people who are actually the real thing. And that's pretty common. I mean, probably every successful person feels the imposter syndrome. And that's where you have these persistent feelings of self-doubt. You feel like you're an intellectual fraud. You feel like you're pulling something over on people. Now, there are some tricks to get around that, and one of them is really simple: security blankets. Like, I've got some papers here, and if I start to stumble, I can look down. But the more important thing is that there really isn't a problem with the imposter syndrome. In fact, that is the key to my success. Why am I successful? My background was sociology as an undergraduate. I went to law school, and now I'm inventing high-tech stuff. How? I'm a great imposter. Now, I'm not alone. This is the main reason I have the papers here. Here's what Einstein said about himself: the exaggerated esteem in which my life work is held makes me feel very ill at ease. I feel compelled to think of myself as an involuntary swindler. That's Einstein. Not exactly a swindler, but that's how he saw himself. Maya Angelou: I've run a game on everybody, and they're going to find out. And my favorite is Steve Jobs, because I feel this thing all the time. When you ask creative people how they did something, they feel a little guilty because they didn't really do it. They just saw something. So the key to success is actually being an imposter. I mean, just ask Mark Zuckerberg, Larry Ellison, Bill Gates. I mean, they couldn't even finish college, so they didn't know that their ideas were too big, they were going to fail, they'd fall on their face, and they'd be sweeping out driveways for a living. Not so much. That was the key to their success, was being an imposter. So now I graduated Harvard Law, I have all these patents. I mean, now as he was talking, I was thinking, well, that guy's not me, right? That's got to be someone else who did it. But here's the thing. I worked on the Obama campaign, I graduated magna from Harvard, and internally, I know I tricked them all. Okay? I got away with it, and it's awesome. But there are other people who got away with it too. There really isn't a thing as an imposter syndrome. It's an imposter superpower. It's the power to know enough to come up with solutions, to put pieces together in a novel way, but not to know that it's impossible to do it. So you don't want to over-specialize. Over-specialization creates a real opacity. You only look in your specialization. If you don't know that much about something, you're going to think about the things that no one else thought about. There's this saying that no great physics discovery was made by, and depending on how old the physicist is, I'll say either 30 or 40, made by any physicist over that age. And that's not why. No great physics discovery was made by someone who spent 20 years being told it couldn't be done. And you get people who switch to physics at age 50, they come up with some great things. So I've a little bit run out of time. I got 5 seconds. So let me just tell you, nothing is standing in your way but you. You can do it. Everyone is innovative, and go make it happen. All right?
Thank you. So you talk about imposters, and I think when people think they have an invention, they think, oh, I'm an imposter. What do I know about an invention? How can an individual know whether their idea should be pursued or not?
Oh, that's such a, well, first of all, I'll tell you my process. Out of 100 ideas, throw out 95 of them. Just think about it overnight, don't do it right away. But in the morning, look at it and say, would anyone care about it? Would it change the world? Would it change my life? And some of the best inventions are personal to you. So the invention might be, here's a better way to communicate with my kids. And think about it overnight. And do you pursue that? Hey, you don't need a patent office to pursue it. You can just do it yourself. So you throw out most of them, and then you sort of ask around, you research whether someone else has done it. And if it looks like it has legs, write it up, file a provisional patent application, find some partners, and run with it. And the fact is, if you don't have a degree in that area, you probably have a good idea.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
That was speaker number 12, Gary Schuster, the imposter. Does that mean it wasn't really? I'm confused now. Okay. Speaker number 13 is Deborah Suter. Deborah has lived in Chilliwack for almost all of her life. She is a registered professional forester with years of experience as a natural history interpreter for BC Parks and the Great Blue Heron Nature Reserve. Deborah serves on the board of the Fraser Valley Watershed Coalition and is an active member of the Chilliwack Parks and Trails Committee. Deborah is fascinated by, are you ready for it? Banana slugs, and organized an annual slug race at Cultus Lake Provincial Park for several years. We're still waiting for the finishers. Please welcome Deborah Suter.
Well, thank you, everybody. My topic is sharing this space, lessons from nature. My idea isn't a new one, but it's important. The idea that protecting natural areas is economically beneficial. Now, how many of us are anxious and worried about climate change, and we wonder about the complexity and the problems and what can we do? Well, I'm here to tell you that we can accomplish an awful lot by just doing nothing. That's right. If we limit our activities on the landscape, nature has this amazing capacity to rebound exponentially when we leave things alone. I like to compare it to the mathematics of, what did I call that? The mathematics of compounded savings. I don't know if you've heard this idea where you save a penny today and then double it 2 pennies the next day and then 4 pennies the day after that, and the next thing you're supposed to be a gazillionaire. Well, in fact, if you double your pennies every day for 30 days, you will have more than $5 million. And it kind of works that way with nature. That is, if we just stop doing the bad things to the environment, like introducing pollutants to streams or cutting too many trees, for example, and let nature run its course, it rebounds in ways that we can't even imagine. There are so many actual lessons from nature that I'd like to share with you, a couple right now. One is the cod fishery on the east coast of Canada collapsed in 1992 due to overfishing. The federal government implemented a moratorium, do nothing, on the cod fishery, and we all crossed our fingers, and the cod are coming back. In Central California, honeybees are responsible for pollinating huge almond orchards. When farmers opted to let some of the almond orchards go wild, the bees loved it, and the almond production multiplied significantly. They're using less land, but they got more almonds. And another example is the salmon in the Thames. Now, they were thought to be gone forever because of pollution from sewage and from effluent from industrial operations. The people in the 60s put a lot of pressure on the government to ban toxins in the Thames. Simple message. Stop doing it. Stop doing something. And you know what? The salmon have come back. In fact, there are 125 species of fish living and spawning in the Thames. We can do it. We have the capacity. All we have to do is nothing. Pull back on our operations. We find that if we do less on the landscape, reducing our impact on land and water, that we actually increase our productivity and our profit. And we don't even have to think about all those obvious things like, oh, improved air quality or more space for outdoor recreation and wildlife or beauty for that matter. We can be hard-nosed and just look at the bottom line. We can work together with nature to our mutual benefit. It's in our long-term interest to protect natural areas because it's the secret to our long-term success. When we understand nature, we have greater clarity. Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. You already answered the question I was about to ask, so I'll just improvise then. How do we find the political will to do nothing when people scream that, why isn't the government doing something about these forest fires?
You put the nail on the head there, or the hammer on the head of the nail right there. Was I mentioned the salmon in the Thames. It took public pressure on the government to ban the toxins in the Thames. It's up to us. We can work together. Social media is such a great tool. The government is our government. We put pressure on them. We say what's important to us. Corporations are looking at the short term, and we've got to convince them to look at the long term.
Thank you, Deborah. And that was speaker number 13, Deborah Suter.
It's also our last speaker for the evening, and we have barely scratched the surface with these 13 wonderful speakers. They can see us, I think, in the green room.
They can.
So please give them a round of applause.
So, however, only 6 of those speakers can move on to speak at TEDxChilliwack. And while our speaker selection panel has sequestered themselves away to discuss their picks, you have a chance to vote for the people's choice. We're going to hand out some ballots
We've
to everyone.
already
If you
handed them.
haven't got one already, put your hand up.
Or if you need a pen.
And we do have a few pens. Mary and maybe Carlene can pass out the pens to everyone to share. Please only vote for one person.
Pens? Anybody need a pen? Pens? Sure, I'm going to take.
Apparently they're having their own vote in the green room.
Yes, I do.
So once you have made your selection, please pass your ballots down to the end of the row and Carlene will pick them up. And maybe Mike, could you help pick up the ones in that corner there? We're here. Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah. Yes, so if you're choosing speaker number 9, be careful because there are 2 9s. So Joanna actually is speaker number 8 and Lawson is number 9. So please vote by name.
So while we're waiting to hear who tonight's winners are, I'd like to remind you that all of our speakers are competing to earn a coveted spot to speak at TEDxChilliwack 2020. It's being held on Saturday, April 11th at the Chilliwack Cultural Center.
So in addition to some of the speakers that you've heard tonight, we have some curated speakers that our team has chosen, and we've handpicked 7 speakers. We have concert violinist Dr. Calvin Dick from Abbotsford, Cheakton First Nation Chief Derek Epp, a world-renowned editorial illustrator from Yarrow, Tom Froese, Amber Price, the owner of The Bookman, our former MP, Chuck Strahl, and a couple that are with Three Crows Productions, Dallas Yellowfly and Alicia Colley. They are contemporary Indigenous storytellers.
Has everyone completed their ballots? Has everyone had their ballot picked up? Great. Michael, are we going on to the
We are
video?
going on to the video.
Okay, and to whet your appetite even more, let's take a look at TED Talk from James Veach entitled, "This is what happens when you reply to spam email." Has their ballot picked up? Great. Michael, are we going on to the...
Flashback.
A few years ago, I got one of those spam emails. And it managed to get through my spam filter. I'm not quite sure how, but it's turned up in my inbox, and it was from a guy called Solomon Odonka. I know. It went like this. It said, "Hello, James Veach. I have an interesting business proposal I want to share with you, Solomon." I got one of those spam emails. Now, my hand was kind of hovering on the delete button, right? That's why I was looking at my phone. It turned up in my inbox, and it was from a guy called Solomon Odonka. I know. It went like this. It said, "Hello, James Veach. I have an interesting business proposal I want to share with you, Solomon." I got one of those spam emails. Now, my hand was kind of hovering on the delete button, right? That's why I was looking at my phone. It turned up in my inbox. A few years ago, I got one of those spam emails. And it managed to get through my spam filter. I'm not quite sure how, but it's turned up in my inbox, and it was from a guy called Solomon Odonka. I know. It went like this. It said, "Hello, James Veach. I have an interesting business proposal I want to share with you, Solomon." Now, my hand was kind of hovering on the delete button, right? As you are, I was looking at my phone. I thought, I could just delete this. Or I could do what I think we've all always wanted to do. And I said, "Solomon, your email intrigues me." And the game was afoot. He said, "Dear James Veach, we shall be shipping gold to you. You will earn 10% of any gold you distribute." So I knew I was dealing with a professional. I said, "How much is it worth?" He said, "We will start with a smaller quantity." I was like, "Ah," and then he said, "Of 25 kilograms. The worth should be about 2.5 million. I said, Solomon, if we're going to do it, let's go big. I can handle it. How much gold do you have? He said, it's not a matter of how much gold. How much is you're capable of handling? What? We can start with 50 kilograms as a trial shipment. I said, 50 kilograms? There's no point doing this at all. No, so shipping at least a metric ton. So what do you do for a living? I said, I'm a hedge fund executive bank manager. This isn't the first time I've shipped bullion, my friend. No, no, no. Then I started to panic. I was like, now look, where are you based? I don't know about you, but I think we're going via the postal service. It ought to be signed for. Right, that's a lot of gold. He said, it will not be easy to convince my company to do a larger quantity shipment. And I said, Solomon, I'm completely with you on this one. I'm putting together a visual for you to take into the board meeting. Hold tight. This is what I sent Solomon. I don't know if we have any statisticians in the house, but there's definitely something going on. I said, Solomon, attach this email, you'll find a helpful chart. I've had one of my assistants run the numbers. We need to be shipping as much gold as possible. There's always a moment where they try to tug your heartstrings, and this was it for Solomon. He said, I will be so much happy if the deal goes well, because I'm going to get a very good commission as well. And I said, that's amazing. What are you going to spend your cut on? And he said, on real estate, what about you? I thought about it for a long time. And I said one word. Hummus. It's going places. I was in Sainsbury's the other day, and there are like 30 different varieties. Also, you can cut up carrots, and you can dip them. Have you ever done that? Solomon! He said, I have to go to bed now. Till tomorrow, have sweet dreams. I didn't know what to say. I said, bonsoir, my golden nugget, bonsoir. Guys, you have to understand, this has been going for like weeks, albeit hitherto the greatest weeks of my life, but I had to knock it on the head. It was getting a bit out of hand. Friends were saying to me, James, do you want to come out for a drink? I was like, I can't, mate, I'm expecting an email about some gold, you know. So I figured I had to knock it on the head. I had to take it to a ridiculous conclusion. So I thought I concocted a plan. I said, look, Solomon, I'm concerned about security. When we email each other, we need to use a code. And he agreed. And I said, Solomon, I spent all night coming up with this code. We need to use it in all further correspondence. Lawyer. Gummy bear. Bank, cream egg. Legal, fizzy cola bottle, claim peanut M&Ms, documents, jelly beans, Western Union. Guys, a giant gummy lizard. I knew these were all words they use, right? I said, please call me Kit Kat in all further correspondence. I didn't hear back. I thought, I've gone too far. I've gone too far. So I had to backpedal a little bit. I said, look, Solomon, is the deal still on? Kit Kat. Because you have to be consistent. Then I did get an email back from him. He said, the business is on, I'm trying, blah, 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 blah. I said, dude, you have to use the code. What followed is the greatest email I've ever received. I'm not joking. This is what turned up in my inbox. This was a good day. The business is on. And I'm trying to raise the balance for the gummy bear. So he can submit all the needed fizzy cola bottle jelly beans to the cream egg for the peanut M&Ms process to start. Send £1,500 via a giant Scummy lizards. And that was so much fun, right? That it got me thinking, like, what would happen if I just spent as much time as I could replying to as many scam emails as I could? And that's what I've been doing for 3 years on your behalf. Yeah. Let me tell you, crazy stuff happens when you start replying to scam emails. It's really difficult, and I highly recommend we do it. I don't think what I'm doing is mean, right? There are a lot of people out there who do mean things to scammers. I don't think what I'm doing. All I think I can do all I'm doing is wasting their time. Right? And I think any time they're spending with me is time they're not spending scamming vulnerable adults out of their savings, right? If you're going to do this, and I highly recommend you do, get yourself a pseudonymous email address. Don't use your own email address, because that's exactly what I was doing at the start, and it was a nightmare. Because, I'd wake up in the morning and have like 1,000 emails about penis enlargements, only one of which was a legitimate response to a medical question. But I tell you what, though, guys, any day is a good day. Any day is a good day if you receive an email that begins like this. I am Winnie Mandela, the second wife of Nelson Mandela, the former South African president. I was like, oh, that Winnie Mandela. I know so many. I need to transfer $45 million out of the country because of my husband Nelson's health condition. Let that sink in. She sent me this, which is hysterical. And this looks fairly legitimate. This is a letter of authorization, but to be honest, if there's nothing written on it, it's just a shape. I said, Winnie, I'm really sorry to hear of this. Given that Nelson died 3 months ago, I describe his health condition as... That's the worst health condition you can have, not being alive. She said, kindly comply with my banker's instructions. One love. I said, of course, no woman, no cry. She said, my banker would need transfer of $3,000. One love. I said, no problemo. I shall share it. Thank you.
Okay, so we've got results. We've got all sorts of stuff coming up. This evening has gone very well. We want to really thank the speakers who have put it on the line, and it's hard getting up here to talk about your passion in front of people that maybe don't share it. But you've learned a lot tonight, and I certainly have as well. So, Michael, are we ready to move on?
Well, you know what's even harder than getting up here to speak is getting up here to speak when the speaker selection panel is taking longer than they should have, and we have to come up with things to say. So we may speak very slowly. Not yet. So before we get to the selections, though, just want to say that hundreds of hours have been put into organizing and planning not only for TEDxChilliwack, but also for this event tonight. And we're always looking for more volunteers. And if you can't find Carrie to volunteer through her, just come and speak to one of these people directly. Or you can go to our website to sign up to volunteer as well.
And of course, we couldn't do this without our very generous partners. If you or your business would like to become a partner, again, please check our website or see a committee member. Then I've got this really cool note. It says, see separate notes page if you need to kill time. Never guess what? There is no separate notes page.
Yep.
you want me? Oh, do I go first?
We're go.
Okay, awesome. I get the really exciting part of telling you we have our People's Choice selection. If it's you back there
In the green room.
in the green room, we want you to join us on stage.
Back here.
Back here, behind us. That's the separate notes page. Our People's Choice selection is Taylor Aller.
Come on in, Taylor. Congratulations. Yeah. Well, we'll just pose quickly for a photo. Barris, you're up. Barris, you're not ready?
Go to the notes page.
Taylor, how does it feel?
Awesome.
Do you miss congeniality?
Thank you very much.
Well done.
There you go. That was a bonus speech by Taylor. All right. So now our selection panel came to a decision, and we'll find out who is moving on to speak at TEDxChilliwack in April. If your name is called, please join us on stage with Taylor. And in no particular order, our first selection is Debbie Deneau. Next up is Steve Kroner. And the third person joining us is Carrie DeYoung.
Congratulations.
Fourth person chosen, Hardeep Chagger. There he is. And last but certainly not least is Lawson Graham.
Can we get you all to please take a step forward and please again welcome our speakers for TEDxChilliwack on April the 11th. The paparazzi still at work out there.
Yes.
We'll let them.
We'll give you a moment still. Smile for all the cameras. This is worse than a wedding.
Is that good? Excellent. So thank you very much. We're going to get you to head off that way.
Just going to ask if there's a particular TED
So we want to thank you all for being here tonight. This facility is fabulous. So I'd like to thank Tim for hosting us all here. If you enjoyed tonight's event, we promise you that our TEDxChilliwack main event on April the 11th will be even better.
And tickets are now available for sale on our website, TEDxChilliwack.com. Adults can attend for $59, seniors and students for $39, and we do have special pricing for 2 and 4 packs as well. But don't wait, tickets are sure to sell out because we have a whole lot of stuff that's going to be happening, including lunch and refreshments, great speakers.
And great MCs.
Musical entertainment, I was getting to that.
Okay.
And an innovation alley.
Thanks to our speakers again, who had the courage and passion to come up here and share it with us tonight. We'd like to encourage you, yes, you, to think about speaking at TEDxChilliwack 2021.
I'm just going to stop you for a
Okay,
moment.
stop me.
Because you skipped a page,
Oh,
an
did I?
important page.
Is that the notes page?
That's the free draw page.
Ooh, you do that one.
Okay. So when you were invited to attend, we said that one lucky winner would win a 2-pack of tickets as long as they were here tonight. So once everybody had checked in, we made the draw, and the lucky winner is Kevin Raffle.
Who's
So,
Kevin?
Kevin, you're here.
Congratulations, Kevin.
You don't need to come up on stage or
See-
make a speech, but we will contact you and make sure that you get your tickets.
Well done, Michael. So again, we'd like to encourage you, yes, you, to think about talking about TEDx at TEDxChilliwack 2021. Look for information on our website this fall or follow us on social media to keep up to date.
So thanks to all of you, our studio audience, and of course, those of you watching from home. We hope you enjoyed the event. Good night.
Good night. I took it apart and I fell apart.